I was never thrilled about my son, Julian, diving into the dating scene the second he moved to London for his art degree. I figured I'd have a few years of peace before I had to sit through a painful dinner with a partner and fake a smile. But barely a term in, he came home for a weekend with Maya. Maya was entirely different from anyone I'd envisioned for Julian. She wore oversized vintage leather jackets, had bright silver rings on almost every finger, and spoke with a rapid-fire, sarcastic wit that immediately put my guard up. Julian had always been gentle, quiet, and deeply organized. Maya felt like a whirlwind. I tolerated her presence, but I kept my distance. For months, whenever she visited, I mastered the art of the polite nod and the one-word answer, usually pretending to be deeply engrossed in a book or my laptop just to avoid a real conversation. She never seemed fazed by my icy demeanor. She just kept showing up with that same confident, easygoing grin. Then came the weekend at our lakeside cabin. My husband had cooked a massive breakfast, but right before we were set to eat, he realized he'd left his specialized medication back at our main house. He and Julian scrambled into the car to drive back and retrieve it, leaving me completely stranded at the cabin alone with Maya. The silence in the kitchen was deafening. I sat on the porch, staring out at the water, determined to look as unapproachable as possible. Maya wandered out, hands jammed into her jacket pockets, looking out at the lake. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Finally, she cleared her throat. "So, do you actually know how to fly fish, or do you just keep those rods on the wall for decoration?" I looked up, surprised. There was a tiny flicker of nervousness in her eyes that I'd never seen before. "I know how," I replied stiffly. Her face completely lit up. "My granddad left me his old reel, but I haven't the slightest clue how to cast without risking an eye. Want to show me how it's actually done?" Against my better judgment, I found myself walking down to the dock with 2 rods. At first, it was agonizingly awkward. We stood in silence, the only sound being the whip of the line through the air. But then Maya tried a heavy cast, caught her hook firmly in the branch of an overhanging willow tree, and managed to trip backwards straight into a patch of mud. She sat there covered in dirt and just started howling with laughter. I couldn't help it, a genuine laugh escaped me. As I helped her up, the ice finally broke. I told her about the time I tried to impress my husband on our third date by pretending I knew how to sail, only to capsize the boat into a harbor full of algae and garbage. 1 hour of fishing turned into 3. Out on the water, the sarcastic front vanished. I discovered Maya wasn't just a chaotic art student. She was incredibly sharp, fiercely ambitious, and already working on opening her own community gallery. Her laid-back attitude wasn't a lack of drive, she just refused to sweat the small stuff. By the time my husband and Julian pulled back into the driveway, Maya and I were sitting on the edge of the dock, covered in lake water, absolutely blasting 90s hip-hop from her phone, and loudly arguing over who had caught the bigger trout. Julian stood on the shore, staring at us with his jaw dropped as if he'd walked into a parallel universe. Maya just waved a muddy hand at my husband and shouted, "Hey, we saved you some breakfast, but you owe us a coffee." That afternoon changed everything. I stopped tolerating Maya and actually started looking forward to her visits. It's funny how a tangled fishing line and a little bit of mud can completely change your mind.